When Huang Yuan opened his eyes from a baby state, he found himself crossing over. Quickly, he realized that he had a super strong Saiyan bloodline. In the process of growing up, he realized that this world is a world of American captains and Stark Group's comics. I thought he was Marvel World, but I saw news about Wayne Group on TV. Even Huang Yuan, who is a Saiyan, is a bit panicked now. However, troops for the enemy, Earth for floods. He decided to let the world know the power of Saya people with his own fists. Setting. This is the new metaverse, not the movie universe or the comic universe. Please be patient. Events that have already passed. The Shield game, Iron Man, Eternal Clan and the Heavenly God Group, Sea King and Land War, Superman's death and the first appearance of the Lantern Ring, keywords of the novel. Meiman Muscle Saiyan no pop-ups, Meiman Muscle Saiyan TXT complete collection download, Meiman Muscle Saiyan latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. My name is Huang Yuan and I am a Saiyan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. My name is Huang Yuan and I am a Saiyan, P.S. The Saiyan characters in this book have been modified to fit the development of the plot, so please do not forcefully incorporate the Saiyan characters in the anime for comparison. The final interpretation of all characters is in my hands. I can discuss any opinions, but please do not use yin and yang or criticize others. Boom. The earth trembles, yellow sand rises everywhere, and smoke and dust roll. Waiting for the dust to dissipate, a figure leaped out of the half-meter deep pit. Although his clothes were already in a state of disrepair, his strong body was as hard as steel, with no visible scars. Under a head of black curly hair, the eyes with pale blue pupils seem like two clear springs, clear and transparent. Like a chiseled national character face, carrying a strong and unyielding spirit. Perfect and flawless like ancient Greek sculptures. Across from him, a young and handsome man with black hair and yellow skin dressed in a Zhongshan suit was standing quietly, looking at him. The stark contrast in clothing between the two seemed to describe the situation of the battle. Clark, do you want to continue fighting? The man in Zhongshan suit asked with a smile. Why not, Huang? The man named Clark also smiled on his face. The next moment, his short legs suddenly exerted force, and the ground under his feet immediately centered around him, with a large number of spider-web cracks spreading towards the surroundings. Clark rushed towards Huang with a whistling sound as if he had popped out of his mouth. The clenched fist, with all its strength, and the intense pressure formed by being squeezed, aimed straight at the opponent's face. If it were in the past, Clark still needed to control his power anytime and anywhere, afraid of harming people and things around him. But now the man in front of him, named Huang Yuan, can help him lift all restrictions. Then fully and joyfully release the pent-up grievances that have been suppressed in my heart for many years. Bang! This heavy punch was taken down by Huang Yuan with just his left hand. A strong wind suddenly swept away in a circular shape with two people at the center. Clark was not surprised, he punched heavily again. His attack moves are extremely rough and disorganized, but they are straightforward. Under the collision of fists and feet, although it was only human flesh, a huge roar of heavy machinery collided. The ground beneath their feet, where the two had fought, seemed as if it had been washed away by artillery, with pits and depressions that were unbearable to see. 8 minutes later. With a bang, Clark was kicked and flew over 100 meters. After rolling continuously for more than 10 meters on the ground, Clark finally let go of this force and then lay down on the ground, looking up in a zigzag shape. Quickly, Huang Yuan also flew over and landed beside him. Thank you, Huang. I have never felt so comfortable both physically and mentally before. Although he was almost beaten up a lot, Clark sat up and laughed heartily, feeling extremely happy. Huang Yuan shrugged his shoulders and said, I promise to help you solve your problems. Clark stood up and reached out his hand in front of Huang Yuan, saying, I'm glad to have a fight with you this time. Thank you for your generous help, Huang. The two of them held hands tightly together. After releasing his palm, Huang Yuan returned to his office with Clark. Looking up and drinking a large bucket of mineral water, Clark let out a satisfied moan. It's really enjoyable. Huang Yuan took out a small black card from his left sleeve, measuring only 3 centimeters in length and width. After Clark put down the bucket, he handed the card over. This is my personal contact information. If you have anything, you can call me. Clark took the small card and as his pupils moved slightly, the card immediately began to enlarge continuously. The particles raised at the micrometer level on top were incredibly clear to him, and he quickly remembered that special number. I live on Kent Farm in Smowell, Kansas, and if you have time, feel free to come to my house. Clark happily patted Huang Yuan's shoulder. I'm sure I'll go, Huang Yuan agreed without hesitation. Alright, my experience hasn't ended yet, so I'll keep going. Clark Kent stepped forward and hugged Huang Yuan, saying, I will miss you, Huang. Me too, Clark. After giving Clark a ride, Huang Yuan returned to his office. I didn't expect to encounter Superman while traveling, and the world began to become interesting. Huang Yuan squinted his eyes and muttered to himself, looking at the newspaper on the table. On the newspaper cover on the table, there was a young man dressed casually and with a wild and unrestrained face. Tony Stark, officially taking over Stark Industries, touching his chin, Huang Yuan got up and brewed a cup of tea before returning to his seat. He traveled to this world 19 years ago, and at first he thought it was just an ordinary world. Until Huang Yuan discovered through newspaper information that there were names like Captain America, Stark Industries, and Wayne Group that were so well known in this world. He only then realized that he had come to an incredible universe. However, Huang Yuan didn't have much concern because he had a golden finger since birth, which is of Saiyan ancestry. However, strangely enough, after birth, he discovered that he did not have a tail. But in other aspects, it is the performance of purebred Saiyans, and I don't know why. The potential of the Isaiah people, as long as they don't die in the early stages, is enough to deal with the vast majority of dangers in these two merged worlds. And the incarnation of rules and regulations such as the 4 great gods, the court of life, and death and dreams. Basically, as long as Huang Yuan doesn't force himself to death, it's difficult to encounter them. Dear brother, I'm back. Just then, a crisp and lively voice sounded outside, then a pair of tender white hands pushed open the door of the office. A petite and agile figure with long black hair over the shoulder burst into his room. Jilly, I've taught you many times, you have to knock on the door when you come in. Huang Yuan frowned. Well, I won't knock on my brother's room. Carrie wrinkled her nose and said mischievously. You little girl, let it be. Huang Yuan shook his head and was too lazy to take care of his mischievous sister. When Huang Yuan was 8 years old, his parents found this sister somewhere. Although until now, his parents insist that Carrie is their biological daughter. But Huang Yuan is very clear in his heart that this girl's identity is definitely not simple. Carrie chuckled and threw her backpack on the sofa, then leaned over to Huang Yuan. Why? Huang Yuan raised his eyebrows and asked as he looked at his sister who was reaching out to him. I'm hungry, Carrie said weakly as she rubbed her belly with her other hand. It's really time to take you to the hospital for inspection. Is there a cosmic roundworm growing in your stomach? Huang Yuan said helplessly. But the hand obediently took out $10 from her pocket and placed it in Carrie's little hand. Thank you, brother. You're the best. After kissing Huang Yuan's face, Carrie happily ran out to buy something. I really owe you in my previous life, Huang Yuan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Sir, we haven't detected any radiation reactions or any residual heat. There are no non-human organisms, tissues or liquid residues on site. It can be concluded that this is not a sign of combat formed by thermal weapons or supernatural objects. A somewhat Mediterranean agent is looking at the report in his hand and making a phone call. Agent Coulson, are you trying to tell me? Those numerous deep pits with a diameter of 7 or 8 meters and a depth of about half a meter are all formed by human labor. Listening to the questioning on the phone, Coulson's cheeks twitched. But he could only say, "That's right, everything at the scene is telling me, that's the fact, my director Fry." After a brief silence on the phone, he continued, "Coulson, I will immediately apply to retrieve satellite monitoring data. We cannot let these creatures, who possess the destructive power of a cluster of Cambodian weapons bombing, go unchecked. Imagine what kind of disaster it would be if this battle took place in New York or Washington. You start arranging all the agents out now, closely monitoring the surrounding counties where the incident occurred. If you find any suspicious individuals, you have the right to investigate thoroughly." Coulson nodded solemnly and said, "I understand, Director. I have noticed that many people are commenting, so I am returning here to explain in advance. Firstly, I won't make any changes to the storyline of integrating Marvel and DC. Here is the outline. Secondly, I have decided on what to prioritize and what to supplement, as some characters may disappear due to fusion due to the plot. The outline is written well and there are hardly any major revisions. If you are very unhappy, make sure I make the necessary changes. Either you get a Silver or Gold Alliance leader, or don't expect me to change just by listening to your one-sided words. Finally, don't comment in the comments section about what is bound to be a eunuch or something that can't be written down. If you have the courage to bet with me, just shut up. Otherwise, if you go and write a book according to your own requirements, and then come to DSS with good grades, I will definitely not dare to fart and even sing to you. Alright, my stomach has been hurting and I have to beg for today's meal money. Sorry everyone, my temper and tone are not very good." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Evil Star Who Visits Your Door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Evil Star Who Visits Your Door. In the past few days, Huang Yuan has been feeling that something is wrong. But for a moment, he couldn't say anything. He doesn't have Clark's incredible sensory abilities, so he can't determine what the problem is. And the small town where I live is located next to the interstate highway, with a lot of traffic on weekdays, making it difficult to determine which strangers are in danger. Today happens to be the weekend, and Jillie's school is on vacation. So, under the demands of her parents, Huang Yuan had no choice but to take her out to play. "Brother, I want to eat hamburgers. Brother, I want to eat fried chicken. Brother, I want to eat fried rice. Brother, I want to eat chicken rolls. Brother, I need to." I spent the whole morning and noon eating in Jillie. If it weren't for the fact that the Saiyan people were also the king of stomachs, Huang Yuan really doubted whether he would have developed anorexia due to Carrie's eating habits. Jillie's extraordinary performance was actually noticed by Huang Yuan long ago. However, he himself is not an ordinary person, and naturally he is extremely tolerant of Carrie. But some people have noticed this anomaly. "Brother." Carrie suddenly pulled on Huang Yuan's sleeve. Huang Yuan subconsciously said, "What do you want to eat again? Let's lead the way ahead. Anyway, I'm just an emotionless card-swiping machine." "No, brother, someone has been following us all along," Carrie whispered. Huang Yuan's face darkened and his eyes narrowed slightly. "That guy right behind us, eating Mexican-style chicken rolls," Carrie continued. Huang Yuan pretended to squat down and tie his shoelaces to observe. Then he stood up and frowned, saying, "He was here before we arrived, not like he was following us." Carrie wrinkled her nose and said, "No, brother. Every 30 meters or so where we passed by before, there was a guy with a microphone like him, and their beards were all shaved clean. Moreover, their eyes, whether or not, would immediately shift towards me, which is why I noticed it." Carrie has sensory abilities similar to Clark, and Huang Yuan believes in this. Huang Yuan's eyes rolled and he suddenly had a plan in his heart. He held Carrie's hand and said, I will solve this later. Today is your day off, so don't let them disturb your interest. Carrie suddenly showed a bright smile and continued to eat with her brother in the small town. In the evening, after delivering Carrie home, Huang Yuan pretended that the client had an urgent matter and took a few bites of food in advance before leaving the door. At the same time, 6 agents were reporting today's situation to Coulson at a hotel in the southern part of the town. Sir, today we have screened a total of 8 individuals with obvious abnormalities, and 3 of them have made special records. A special agent placed 3 photos taken from various angles in front of Coulson. Upon closer inspection, Coulson was puzzled to find that one of them was actually a girl with long hair. The agent quickly reminded, "Sir, I can guarantee that this girl is absolutely abnormal. According to the brothers' records, what she ate in one day today is enough for our entire group to eat for a week." Coulson nodded and said, "Put the 3 of you under key surveillance, remember not to startle the enemy." "Yes, sir." The agents nodded immediately. Immediately after, Coulson raised his hand to look at his watch and frowned, "Oh, Perkins should be back for a shift change." At the next moment, Coulson's face changed, he lifted his hand and quickly untied the holster, pulled out the pistol pinned to his waist, opened the safety, and aimed it at the entrance. The other agents were unclear, but they all drew their guns and aimed them at the door. "It's truly Coulson, full of vigilance." A voice came from the door and said, "Believe me, shooting will only lead you into the abyss of despair." Then I saw the metal door handle suddenly and slowly deform on the front door, and with a click, it fell off and fell to the ground. The door automatically opened, and at this moment, Huang Yuan stood at the main entrance, looking at the people in the room with a harmless smile on his face. "Good evening, agents." Coulson's hand holding the pistol trembled slightly, and he felt a strong suffocation from the young man in front of him. He only experienced this feeling when he was young, when he went to the African grasslands for training, from a lion king weighing nearly 300 kilograms. "What have you done to Perkins and the others?" In the field, only Coulson was able to speak, and everyone else was already nervous and a bit stiff. "You're talking about those people, I'm just letting them have a good night's sleep, after all, they've been working at high intensity for several days." Huang Yuan walked step by step into the room, each step hitting everyone's heart like a heavy hammer. "I'm just here to ask you some questions." Entering the room, Huang Yuan sat leisurely on a chair and asked, "What is the purpose of your coming here?" No one answered in the room, including Coulson. Huang Yuan suddenly frowned and said, "Coulson, I should tell you that I hate anything that threatens my family. No matter what it is, as long as it exists, I will find a way to get rid of it. So, I'll only give you 3 seconds. Every second, you will have a subordinate fall in front of you. 3. 2. Stop, I'll say it." Coulson finished speaking and began to gasp heavily. The pressure he was under earlier was unprecedented. If he hadn't received professional training at the Divine Shield Bureau, he might have collapsed by now. He gestured to his subordinates behind him to put away the pistol with him. If the person in front of them is the one causing those signs, then a handgun may not even be considered a toy for them. Immediately, Coulson spoke out about Fry's previous plan, of course only mentioning the surveillance part. "Very well, you must all leave this small town from tomorrow," Huang Yuan said lightly. "But without orders from headquarters, we—" Before Coulson could finish speaking, Huang Yuan interrupted, "The order will be given to you before you return to headquarters, I promise." After speaking, he stood up and walked to the door. As he was about to leave, Huang Yuan stopped and said coldly, "Remember, if I see any of you again before I come back tomorrow, I don't mind letting him disappear forever on Earth." After speaking, Huang Yuan left the hotel directly. At the next moment, everyone in the room collapsed to the ground, their faces and backs sweating profusely. "Sir, what should we do?" a spy worried. "Take Perkins with you, let's withdraw," Coulson said decisively. "But the task given to us by the director." Coulson turned his head and said seriously, "Now I am the highest official here, and I will take full responsibility for it afterwards." Withdraw. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. No one wanted to face the terrifying man just now. Externally, Huang Yuan first called his family and explained that he was going on a business trip to Washington before departing directly. With a leap, Huang Yuan flew directly into the high sky. As early as infancy, he began to cultivate the qi in his body and was able to float in the air by the age of 2. Now he believes that his control over qi has reached a certain level. Especially the previous battle with Clark strengthened his control over gas. At this point, based on his own judgment, the combat effectiveness should have reached the level of Late Eyes. In the world of Dragon Ball, it may just be an ant, but in the current environment, it is more than enough to do some things. In less than an hour, Huang Yuan traveled a distance of about 1.5 states to Washington. Subsequently, we quickly found the headquarters of the Divine Shield Bureau and the specific location of the Trident. Theodore Roosevelt Island. However, the agents of the Divine Shield Bureau had not yet noticed that a malevolent star had arrived at the entrance of their headquarters. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Idle Walk Divine Shield Bureau. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Idle Court Walking Divine Shield Bureau. At this moment, at the entrance of the headquarters of the Divine Shield Bureau, a young man wearing a Zhongshan suit slowly walked to the door after landing. "Hey kid, this is not a place where you can come casually. Hurry up and leave." The Secret Service guard at the door saw Huang Yuan and thought he was a lost passenger, so he spoke up and drove away. "Hello, I'm here to find someone," Huang Yuan said humbly and politely with a smile on his face. As the saying goes, if you reach out and don't hit someone with a smiling face, maybe it's the family of a special agent. So the guard opened the computer registration form and asked, "What's your name and who are you looking for?" "My name is Huang Yuan, I'm looking for Nick Fury," Huang Yuan said word by word. "What, can you say it again?" The guard thought for a moment that he had heard wrong. "I'm looking for Nick Fury, the director of your Divine Shield Bureau," Huang Yuan repeated. The guard's face immediately pulled down and left the computer to the window, warning coldly, "Now give you 10 seconds to roll out of my sight, otherwise I have the right to list you as an intruder and shoot you on the spot." Huang Yuan raised his eyebrows and said, "I suggest you call your bureau chief to inquire." The guard took out a pistol upon hearing this and timed it, saying, 10, 9. Huang Yuan sighed helplessly and said, "I'm already very polite. Since you don't listen, don't blame me." As the words fell, he walked up and grabbed the solid metal railing on the detection door, which was the thickness of his arm. Then, while the guard was stunned, he lifted it up and with a creaking sound, the metal railing broke. Then Huang Yuan stepped over the detection platform with his foot raised, and the guards also reacted. They quickly pressed the alarm and took out a pistol to aim at Huang Yuan. Bang bang. 3 consecutive precise shots were fired, but Huang Yuan's clothes were not even broken, and he fell to the ground with a clanging sound. Huang Yuan didn't turn back either, just shook his hand, and a strong wind immediately blew the guard back into the watchtower. The piercing alarm immediately alerted the agents inside the Trident building. The Special Response Team, who was on standby 24 hours a day, had already dressed up and arrived at the first level in just 30 seconds. At this point, they were very puzzled because they received a notification that there was only one intruder. Despite looking at each other, they quickly formed tactical control through cover. Less than 5 seconds later, a figure slowly entered their field of vision. "The intruder in front, stop and capture immediately, otherwise we have the right to shoot you." Huang Yuan seemed to have not heard and continued to move forward. "Shoot." At the next moment, the sound of automatic rifle firing echoed, and bullets kept hitting Huang Yuan's body. But Huang Yuan continued to move forward at a steady pace. The bullet hit him, turning into bumps and falling to the ground, making a continuous clanging sound. When a magazine was fired, all members of the emergency team were stunned and looked at Huang Yuan with monster-like eyes. This guy is actually unscathed, his clothes are not even torn, even if there is a hole. Give you one last chance, let Nick Fury come see me, otherwise you will bear the consequences. Huang Yuan still gave the Divine Shield Bureau one last chance. But as soon as the words fell, the rocket with its tail flame hit his face. Boom! The scorching flames generated by the RPG explosion surged into the sky, with shock waves and heat waves scattered in all directions. But when they looked up again, they found that Huang Yuan was still unharmed. Hey, since you can't listen, I'll have to go see him myself, Huang Yuan sighed helplessly. At this moment, even the most foolish person could see that ordinary automatic weapons and RPGs had no effect on Huang Yuan. Withdraw. The captain of the team immediately ordered to withdraw while notifying the headquarters of the situation through a microphone. Watching the departing team, Huang Yuan raised his hand and threw an energy cannon directly. Boom! The huge explosion and flames directly engulfed the team, and Huang Yuan continued to walk towards the Trident building. Respect before the soldiers. At this moment, in an office at the headquarters of the building, the man looked at the surveillance footage on the computer with a surprised expression on his face. This is not super soldier serum, nor is it any other code-named serum effect. Is this guy an alien? The man began to infer, but soon his face suddenly twitched slightly. Immediately afterwards, he took out a silver button from his arms and quickly stuffed it into his right ear. Yes, I understand. Hanging up the phone, the man took off the button and placed it directly on the ground. After crushing it into small pieces, he grabbed it and threw it into his mouth, swallowing it. Unleash the permission to use special weapons up to level 4. Just as Huang Yuan was about to approach the door, 4 members of the emergency team rushed towards him from 4 different directions. They all held a silver metal long stick in their hands, and when they reached a certain distance, their bodies fell short and they fiercely thrust the tail of the stick into the ground. Buzzing as soon as the long stick touched the ground, the top immediately cracked and a rotating device flew out. After the device quickly flew into mid-air, a light blue shock wave immediately erupted under its rapid rotation. When the shock wave collided with Huang Yuan, it seemed like it had hit a big mountain without causing any fluctuations. Seeing that the thunder stick had no effect, another team member immediately brought the frozen spear, which simultaneously emitted frozen rays on Huang Yuan. Layers of frost suddenly spread from the hit area, attempting to freeze Huang Yuan's entire body. But as Huang Yuan walked, the frost began to continuously shatter and fall onto the ground, unable to hold his pace. At this moment, 2 whistling sounds came and 2 special steel long arrows shot towards them. At the moment of hitting Huang Yuan, a strong explosion occurred, but when the fireworks dissipated, it had no effect at all. On a large tree several tens of meters away, the eagle-eyed man's face changed when he saw this scene. He raised his bow and arrow again, but when the command came from his earphone, he could only immediately withdraw and leave. Less than a second after he left, an energy bomb hit directly. With a roar, all the trees in that area were destroyed by energy bombs. And Huang Yuan continued to move towards the main entrance. Unleash the right to use weapons up to level 7. At this point, the man issued another order to lift the weapon restrictions. Quickly, amidst the buzzing sound, 4 vertical combat helicopters took off quickly and surrounded Huang Yuan in the middle. No need to order, the 4 30mm caliber machine guns carried on the fighter jet immediately roared out. Amidst the intense buzzing, large caliber bullets kept shooting towards Huang Yuan's entire body. From a distance, it was as if 4 streams of metal were constantly pounding Huang Yuan's body, leaving only a metal bullet at his feet. The bullets that could easily break an ordinary person's waist couldn't even make Huang Yuan pause. Activate anti-tank missiles. 4 helicopters simultaneously activated the launch buttons, and 4 anti-tank missiles flew directly towards Huang Yuan under tremendous power. The next second, a violent explosion suddenly erupted, and deafening roars echoed all around. Flames and thick smoke rose into the sky, illuminating the surroundings in the pitch-black night sky. The strong explosion shock waves generated by 4 missiles even directly overturned the green belt several tens of meters away. No one can survive this kind of explosion, no one. Even Steve Rogers can't do it. The man in the office squinted and gritted his teeth. But when the black smoke and flames of the explosion had not yet dissipated, a figure appeared intact in the eyes of everyone after breaking through the smoke. How could this be? What kind of monster is he? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The fierce man receiving plasma cannons with bare hands. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The fierce man with barely handed plasma cannon. Where's Nick Fry? Why haven't he come out yet? Huang Yuan glanced in confusion at the direction of the Trident building. In theory, he's been causing such a commotion that Nick Fury would come out no matter what. But so far, it seems that Nick Fry has no intention of meeting him. Or, it seems that I haven't reached the point of heartache yet. Huang Yuan thought of this and his footsteps finally stopped. Just as the people around him were puzzled, he suddenly made a forward leap and arrived in front of a helicopter. Click. Tens of millimeters thick reinforced glass is like paper paste, easily penetrated by Huang Yuan's palm. With a gentle grab, the glass front cover of the entire helicopter was easily torn off by him, and then the entire helicopter was dismantled like a toy in his hands. The other 3 armed helicopters were so frightened when they saw this scene that they turned their heads and wanted to run. Huang Yuan gave a cold glance and lifted his hand to launch several energy bombs in a row, directly chasing after him. Boom boom boom. 3 huge sparks rose, and all 3 helicopters were resolved in just a few breaths. All the agents who watched this scene seemed to have seen a ghost. A hot weapon that used to have an infinite sense of security in hand is now no different from a burning stick. Some people have already started praying in their hearts that God can descend thunder to kill this demon. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared on the ground outside the Trident headquarters. Immediately after, a silver and gold ball quickly rose up underground, forming a turret under the rapid rotation combination, with the muzzle directly aimed at Huang Yuan's location. Damn it, are you trying to kill us together? At this moment, a level 5 agent seemed to know what it was, cursing loudly while turning around and running away. The people around immediately reacted and fled in panic. The turret was successfully charged in just 2 seconds, and while ejecting a nearly melted metal block, it suddenly fired at Huang Yuan's position. After the barrel of the turret was fired, it turned incredibly red and soft like liquid, and was immediately ejected from the turret's mounting platform. A pale blue energy mass flew out of the muzzle, constantly twisting in the air and emitting a large amount of electric flames. Huang Yuan frowned when he saw this. The energy shell was not a simple thing at first glance, but he didn't have time to dodge, so he extended his hands directly. Want to forcefully connect to a high-energy plasma gun? You're such a clueless guy, go to hell with me. The manager laughed disdainfully upon seeing this scene. Although this plasma gun is a test piece that is inferior to semi-finished products, the core of the projectile it fires also reaches a terrifying high temperature of nearly 10,000 degrees. The vast majority of matter on Earth will be instantly ionized without any resistance. But the next second, his smile froze on his face. The plasma gun, which could melt everything, was now stopped by Huang Yuan with both hands. Feeling the amazing heat emanating from his palm, Huang Yuan's face also began to become solemn. He can ignore the attacks of bullets and shells, as well as resist the continuous bombing of missiles. But now he is still unable to resist the ultimate weapons of human society, such as plasma guns that are comparable to magma or nuclear weapons. That's also why until now, Huang Yuan doesn't want to be labeled as a killer or ultimate antisocial by these people. And the reason why he is able to withstand the plasma gun now is to forcefully wrap the shell with the gas inside his body to prevent it from completely exploding. Ha! Huang Yuan let out a low moan and grabbed the plasma shell with his hands, swinging it fiercely at the same time. The light burst down, and the vaporization that enveloped the shell turned into an energy shock wave, pushing the plasma shell into the air. However, during the push flight, it collided with one side of the headquarters building. The terrifying high temperature immediately vaporized and engulfed the entire building, and then flew straight into the sky. Explosive. In the pitch-black night sky, a shining and bright light suddenly lit up, which could be seen by the entire Washington, D.C. and even 80% of people in East America. Just when everyone thought this light cluster was brilliant and gorgeous, they didn't know. If that light burst on the ground, it would be enough to melt and devour everything within a radius of thousands. At the same time as the explosion, Huang Yuan's gaze became sharp. He raised his palm and aimed at the plasma gun turret at the entrance. The light on the palm flickered, and an energy bomb quickly condensed into shape. Stop it. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded. But Huang Yuan didn't care at all. The energy bomb was immediately launched, accurately hitting the artillery and causing a violent explosion. This explosion even destroyed the entire entrance of the headquarters. The strong shock wave formed even caused numerous cracks in the Trident headquarters, and a large hole almost melted out of the waist of the building. Mom, provoke fake. On the helicopter, Nick Fury, who had just arrived, couldn't help but curse at this scene. That's one of the key pieces of evidence. Stop it now. At this moment, an anxious voice came through the loudspeaker. Huang Yuan turned his head and found that the person he was looking for was bouncing around in anger with a loudspeaker on the nearby helicopter. Sir, may I ask what exactly do you want to do? In the office of the director of the New York branch of the Divine Shield Agency, Nick Fury tried to suppress his angry inquiries. Huang Yuan frowned and said, "First of all, put away your uncomfortable attitude, Nick Fury, because this matter is because of you. And, you can check the surveillance video. I came to you with a friendly attitude from the beginning. And the way your Divine Shield Bureau treats me has already made me very dissatisfied. My patience is limited. Not directly flattening your Divine Shield Bureau is already enough to save face. So, Nick Fury, I hope you and the Divine Shield don't try to challenge the bottom line anymore." Nick Fury was speechless for a moment, and he had already watched the surveillance footage. The other party did indeed come to visit him very formally. "Sir, may I ask where I offended you?" Nick Fury softened his tone. "You can call your agent Coulson to inquire about this, and he will explain it to you clearly," Huang Yuan said and closed his eyes. Nick Fury frowned and took out the phone. He had already guessed roughly in his heart. "Okay, you guys go and carry out another task." After learning about the situation, Nick Fury hung up the phone and said helplessly, "I'm sorry for disturbing your life, so you came to ask for help, right?" At this moment, Huang Yuan opened his eyes and smiled, saying, "That's right, Nick Fury. Now tell me, what price are you willing to pay to calm my anger?" Nick Fury's mouth twitched slightly. When did the incredibly powerful Divine Shield need to pretend to be a grandson in front of others? But now the situation is stronger than humans. Facing the fierce man Huang Yuan who can receive plasma shells in the air, he has to bow down. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Security Advisor of the Divine Shield Bureau. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Security Advisor of the Divine Shield Bureau. Nick Fury took a deep breath and asked, "I don't know what I need to do to satisfy Mr. Huang." Upon hearing this, Huang Yuan knew that Nick Fury had already compromised. Even ready to bleed heavily and be brutally slaughtered. But Huang Yuan doesn't think it strange because he bought it with his strength. If he were an ordinary person or a minor superpower, it would be impossible for him to have such an attitude with the size of the Divine Shield Bureau. As for me, I am actually very articulate. Huang Yuan said with a very kind smile, because my parents taught me from a young age to treat anyone with a peaceful attitude. Your parents are great, and I admire their philosophy of being a good person and their way of education, Nick Fury quickly joked. Huang Yuan said again, but they also said that if you encounter someone who offends you, you should use a thunderous force to let them know that you are not easy to provoke. Nick Fury decisively chose to shut up. So, come on, how do you want to soothe my stimulated soul? Huang Yuan raised an eyebrow. Nick Fury began a brainstorming session, and a few seconds later he spoke up, according to the provisions of the Special Administrative Region's tort law, I need to compensate you a total of $170,000 for mental damages, lost work, and other expenses. In addition to your round-trip travel expenses, labor costs, and lawyer fees, a total compensation of $300,000 will be provided. After speaking, Nick Fury decisively reached out and pulled out the checkbook from his windbreaker pocket. Then he brushed and wrote the numbers on it, signed it, and solemnly handed it over to Huang Yuan. 500,000 Huang Yuan, who took the check, saw the amount on it and raised his eyebrows slightly. The other 200,000 is my personal apology for this matter, and I hope to receive your forgiveness and forgiveness. We will handle all the taxes for you, Nick Fury explained, taking up his pen. Very well, then I'll forgive you, for Franklin's sake. Huang Yuan put the check in his pocket and a bright smile appeared on his face. Nick Fury's eyes twitched slightly, and then he laughed heartily, thank you so much for your generosity. This is also the luck of the Divine Shield Bureau. Then I won't disturb you. I know you're very busy. After Huang Yuan finished speaking, he stood up directly and Nick Fury followed him out of the Trident headquarters building. Arriving at the dilapidated entrance, Huang Yuan suddenly turned his head and said, Nick Fury, don't use the thing I destroyed before next time. If it weren't for me this time, your agents and half of the headquarters would have been blown up. After finishing speaking, Huang Yuan rose directly into the air and flew straight into the sky. Seeing the malevolent star finally leave, Nick Fury lowered his face as if he could drip water. After arriving at the office, there were already two figures inside, but one was lying on the ground. Boss, he gave the attack command. Eagle Eye kicked the guy on the ground and said. Did you find anything from him? Nick Fury asked, staring intently at the level 6 agent on the ground. No, he's very smart and hasn't left any trace, Eagle Eye shook his head. From now on, I will establish an internal team that is not within the organization of the Divine Shield Bureau. I will inform you of the members. Nick Fury gritted his teeth and said, the primary goal is to find out how many of these insiders are inside the Divine Shield. What if you encounter someone at a higher level than me? Eagle Eye hesitated for a moment and said. Tell me directly. Nick Fury replied directly. Okay, Director. Eagle Eye immediately responded. At this moment, Huang Yuan, who was flying in the air, seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stopped his body. Hiss, isn't it right? It's not worth leaving like this. After pondering for a moment, Huang Yuan turned around and flew back to the headquarters of the Divine Shield Bureau in the next second. Hey, Natasha, let go of everything you're doing now. Yes, everything. I have already sent you the information about that person, and your task is. Falk. Nick Fury, who was assigning tasks, was startled by the sudden appearance of Huang Yuan outside the glass window. After quickly hanging up the phone, Nick Fury looked at Huang Yuan, who walked in and forced a smile on his face, saying, Mr. Huang, I don't know why you're visiting us again. Huang Yuan said, I think my current income may not be enough to support my expenses, so. You understand. If possible, why don't I help you ask which company needs a security consultant? Nick Fury asked carefully, knowing his mind, with your skills, your salary is definitely not low. As long as you are in a North American company, you will still sell me a thin face. That's not necessary, Huang Yuan chuckled. Then he said, I heard that the welfare of your Divine Shield Bureau is quite good, so I thought of finding a job with you, such as a security consultant. What do you think? Nick Fury remained silent for a few seconds before continuing. Of course there's no problem with that. Do you have any requirements for salary and job responsibilities? After calculating, Huang Yuan said, my annual salary should not be less than 1.2 million US dollars, and it should also be after tax. If I work, I cannot limit my location and time. But you have to prepay my salary for 1 year and pay taxes, how about that? Without hesitation, Nick Fury agreed, deal. Just kidding, the funding for weapon equipment development and personnel training by the Divine Shield Bureau is calculated in billions every year. Today, Huang Yuan used his actions to tell him how fragile and useless these things are. A fool would refuse to hire such a ruthless person as a bodyguard for $1 million a year. Actually, Nick Fury had already considered this before, but he had already offended them due to the Divine Shield Bureau, so it's not good to talk about this matter again. And with the other person's personality of not wanting to be monitored and disturbed. If it weren't for Huang Yuan's proactive inquiry this time, it would have been at least 2 to 3 years before Nick Fury dared to test the other party's idea. I will give you $2 million US dollars after tax for 1 year, and you can pay it in cash. If you don't mind, we can sign a long-term contract for more than 3 years and pay your annual salary in full, said Nick Fury. You don't need the contract anymore. You should know that thing is not very useful to us. You just need to trust me. How could Huang Yuan possibly sign a contract with the Divine Shield and lose a small black card directly to Nick Fury? Being a security consultant here is nothing more than making some extra money, plus having a reason and a name to use the resources of the Divine Shield Bureau in the future. Even when the time comes, one can directly intervene in the Nine-Headed Snake's rebellion. Moreover, Nick Fury couldn't have bothered him just because of a small matter. Here is my contact information. If you need it, just contact me. If you need the money, just transfer it directly to my account. After speaking, Huang Yuan left the Trident building directly. Looking at the completely invisible figure in the sky, Nick Fury took out the phone and dialed it. Natasha, you don't need to go anymore. No, that person no longer needs to be monitored, and you should not come into contact with him again. The information previously given to you should be destroyed immediately. Don't ask why, execute the command. In the Middle East, outside a private mansion. Natasha, who had already packed her things and boarded the car, frowned after answering Nick Fury's phone call. Suddenly canceling the mission, I'm curious about what this guy did to make Nick Fury make such a decision. Natasha looked at the handsome Asian man with a bright smile on the laptop screen and said. After speaking, she took out a controller from her pocket, pressed the button, and threw it into the nearby lake before leaving. A few minutes later, the mansion was engulfed by towering flames amidst the roar. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Mysterious Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Mysterious Girl, what a sunny day. Huang Yuan, who woke up in the morning, stretched lazily and exercised his muscles and bones. On the side, Carrie also learned her brother's movements, but she couldn't turn a tiger into a cat. Let's go, brother, take you to breakfast. Huang Yuan is very happy. Why do you ask? Because he has money. In the past, his work income could only be described as average, barely enough to feed himself. Now Huang Yuan is a fierce person with an annual salary of 1 million, and he is still the kind after tax. Last night at the family meeting initiated by Huang Yuan, when my parents saw the check for 500,000 yuan, they all looked incredulous. They never imagined that their son could reach such a level, and even suspected that Huang Yuan had done something outrageous. Until Huang Yuan said it was after tax money, the two elders without hesitation took the check directly. When we got up today, except for a note asking the two of us to take care of ourselves, the two elders had completely disappeared. However, Huang Yuan has long been accustomed to it. His parents have always had this kind of character of enjoying money in a timely manner since childhood, completely lacking his good character of diligence, thrift. After taking Carrie to the restaurant and ordering 5 children's breakfasts, he fell into contemplation. It is now 2003 AD, and many things are different from the original work. Tony Stark was born in 1970 in the original work, while here he was born in 1985. Tony Stark has already taken over his own group this year, so the plot representing Steel One will soon begin. The plot of the comeback will soon be on stage. However, Clark's side is still in the developmental stage without awakening, and the initiation time of the positive link should be slower than that of the complex link. All of this makes Huang Yuan feel a bit helpless and headache. The completely chaotic timeline made it impossible for him to accurately predict when the plot in the movie universe would appear. Why do you ask him why he is certain that this is the movie universe rather than the comic universe? You can tell by looking at Nick Fury. So the only organization that Huang Yuan can intervene in the layout is the Divine Shield Bureau, which is publicly displayed. Yesterday's battle, he also noticed the abnormality of the Divine Shield Bureau. Normally, his behavior did not even reach the level of using a plasma gun. It is obvious that there is something unusual in the Divine Shield Bureau. Anyone who has watched the plot of the American team can understand the reason for this anomaly. So Huang Yuan later chose to join the Divine Shield Bureau as a security advisor, so the 9-headed snake had no reason to harass him again. After all, in a sense, Huang Yuan is now the safety guard of the Hydra. Then there is the issue of strength enhancement. Ordinary equipment can no longer meet his need to improve his strength. If you engage in a fight with an opponent, it is easy to cause significant damage with his level of strength, making ordinary people on Earth and hidden experts too early aware of his existence. The previous battle with Clark was like this, and the Divine Shield Bureau directly targeted him. At present, he needs to start with technology, such as the gravity device in Dragon Ball, which is a good thing. So whether it's the Divine Shield or Stark, they are all the forces he is prepared to use. The Battle of the Divine Shield Bureau was one of his layouts. Show enough strength to make those people hesitant to have random thoughts about themselves, and then join in to obtain resources. I can't blame him for being too careful. The Saiyan people are indeed very strong when they grow up. But when it was weak in the early stages, I was also afraid of the hidden big shots in Marvel and DC. Low-key development in the early stage is the key. Huang, this is the meal you and Carrie ordered. At this moment, the voices of 2 waiters delivering food interrupted Huang Yuan's thoughts. He regained his composure and said gently, "Thank you, Belize." So, 5 portions of children's breakfast and 5 portions of steak rice were placed on the assembled dining table. The people around me have long been accustomed to the appetite of these siblings and have not been surprised by anything. "Brother, where are you taking me to play today?" Carrie said eagerly. "Brother, I'll take you to the big city to play." Huang Yuan chewed a large piece of steak before elegantly wiping his mouth and laughing. 12542. I've told you a few times that when eating out, girls must maintain elegance and reserve. Huang Yuan frowned. Carrie quickly put down her knife and fork upon hearing this, and then cheered again. "Your education of your sister is truly amazing." At this moment, an elegant female voice came from beside. Huang Yuan turned his head and saw a young girl with just over-ear black hair sitting on the next table, looking around 8 or 9 years old. She has Asian black hair, black pupils, and yellow skin, but her features have some European edges. At this moment, there was also a children's meal in front of her, looking curiously at the Huang Yuan siblings. "Thank you very much for your praise, it's not really much," Huang Yuan replied briefly. "My dad never cared about me, he just came to see me every now and then left me again," the girl sighed. "Ah, do you have no mother or brother or sisters?" asked Carrie. "No, I'm an only child. I do have an uncle, but he lives too far away," the girl said helplessly. "My name is Jilly, Huang Jilly, and you, Joey turned around and said happily. My name is Eli, Eli Belloc. Eli also put down his knife and fork and said to Carrie face to face. This is my brother, Yuan. Carrie continued to introduce. Nice to meet you all. Eli reached out and shook hands with her siblings, which made Huang Yuan feel something was wrong. Eli, why haven't I seen you in town before? Huang Yuan withdrew his hand curiously and asked. I'm traveling around the world, Eli said with a smile as she withdrew her hand. I want to find an answer I wanted to know a long time ago. After meeting Mr. Huang and Sister Carrie today, I understood what I was looking for. Huang Yuan frowned as an 8 or 9-year-old girl traveled around the world. What a joke. I want to live with you and be friends with Carrie, can I, Mr. Huang? Eli said sincerely. Huang Yuan's face was filled with black question marks. If you are concerned about any issues, you can sign this document. Eli took out a document from her backpack and handed it to Huang Yuan while speaking. With a curious mind, he began to flip through the documents. This is a custody transfer document, and the name of the intermediary in the signature is undoubtedly that of a Supreme Court Justice of the state, while the name of the other party's father is a text he does not even recognize. Huang Yuan was confused again. As if understanding Huang Yuan's thoughts, Eli explained, that's my father's name, and each generation of surnames in our family is independent. What's going on? Why did he adopt a stranger girl? But at some point, he had already started signing his name on the document. Damn it. Huang Yuan gritted his teeth and forcefully stopped his hand, staring at Eli and saying, Who the hell are you? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Mysterious Visitors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Mysterious Visitors, I said, my name is Elabelok, Elatani smiled. After putting down his pen, Huang Yuan looked up and said solemnly, You have been bewitching my soul since we met, wanting me to sign this document. No, it's voluntary from the depths of your heart. Eli smiled and said, After all, you haven't signed yet, have you? Are you joking? Is he mentally ill? Why should he adopt a girl for no reason? Are you peeping into my soul? Huang Yuan asked with a slight squint in his eyes. He didn't find it strange, after all, Marvel also had a psychic like Professor X. Is this important? Eli asked in confusion. We didn't even know each other before, don't you think this is too strange? Huang Yuan felt that the girl in front of him had a big problem. We can gradually get to know each other in the future, Eli smiled sweetly. Impossible. Huang Yuan's expression had already shown anger and he said, I don't care who you are, what your purpose is. Stay away from me and my family. What if I say no? Eli still smiled, but there was something inexplicable in her eyes. Then don't blame me. Huang Yuan's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and the qi in his body began to circulate. He absolutely does not allow anyone to threaten the people he cares about. At the beginning of each month, there is a subsidy of $300,000, and an additional $3 million in full attendance bonus is paid at the end of each year, all after tax, Eli suddenly said quickly. Huang Yuan was stunned for a moment, and the qi running in his body suddenly stopped. On page 7 of the document, there are items 10 to 15 about the material rewards that can be obtained for raising me, Eli pointed to the document on the desk. Huang Yuan glanced at Eli, then flipped directly to page 7 and indeed discovered these regulations. He had a strange expression on his face. Previously, his attention had been focused on the other person, causing him to only glance briefly at the front and back content. Tell me, who is your father? Huang Yuan asked after a moment of pause. He's quite famous among you, but I can't conveniently call out his name because it might cause trouble, Eli said with an apologetic expression. But believe me, if he sees me happy, there is a high probability that you will receive the benefits he has bestowed upon you. And you will need my help in the future. This statement made Huang Yuan depressed, as it sounded like the girl's father was a remarkable figure. Although it may be deceiving him, in this world where everything is possible, Huang Yuan dare not gamble. The problem is, this ant can't even drive away now. If we're going to take action, let's not say if we can pass it. What if we hit the smaller one and the larger one? Now his strength is not strong enough, let's endure it. So Huang Yuan looked at Carrie, who had been eating beside him, and asked, "Carrie, do you mind?" Carrie put down the tableware and tilted her head for a moment before saying, "I don't mind, brother." Nodding, Huang Yuan looked at Eli and asked, "Can we not sign?" Eli shook her head and said slowly, "Believe me, you won't regret signing it in the future." Huang Yuan really wanted to explode now, but an incredibly oppressive feeling suddenly enveloped him. As if there were eyes staring at him in the dark. Huang Yuan has confirmed that a super existence has locked him down, and as long as he dares to make any changes, he will directly take action. Taking a deep breath, Huang Yuan took out a pen from his pocket and signed his name at the end of the document. The next moment after signing the name, the white paper in front of me suddenly ignited a blue flame, which startled Huang Yuan. In the burning flames, the original white and black paper suddenly turned into a yellowed parchment roll. An inexplicable feeling appeared in his heart. No, it should be in his soul. What kind of thing? Huang Yuan looked around and found that everyone turned a blind eye to this scene, as if he were in another world. This is the new covenant, one of the gifts my grandfather gave me back then. The flames quickly extinguished, and Eli rolled the parchment into a scroll and put it into the cartoon backpack next to her. What if I break the contract? Huang Yuan asked cautiously. I don't think you would want to know, Eli smiled as she zipped up her backpack. The corners of his eyes twitched slightly, and Huang Yuan secretly swore in his heart that he would not sign contracts casually in the future. After sighing, he turned his head and said apologetically, "Carrie, I can't take you to the big city today. Can we wait until next weekend?" "Okay, brother." Carrie was very obedient and didn't feel any unhappiness. So, in a daze, she adopted a little girl in the restaurant. In the evening, walking on the way home. Huang Yuan's mind is still a bit buzzing. He doesn't know how to tell his parents about Eli's situation. At this moment, Eli took the initiative to hold on to Huang Yuan's right hand. This reminds me of the feeling of my father holding my hand and walking on the Silver Avenue for the only time. Eli suddenly sighed. Silver Avenue. Huang Yuan always felt like he had heard of it somewhere, but couldn't remember it for a moment. Soon, the three of them arrived at their doorstep. "Brother, whose car is that? Why is it parked at our doorstep?" Carrie pointed to a black extended Rolls-Royce parked at the intersection ahead and asked. Seeing three people appear, the black car door immediately opens. A young white man in casual attire walked out of the car, with two bodyguards following closely behind. Then the man walked quickly towards Huang Yuan and the three others, clearly looking for them. "Hello, Mr. Huang, it's our first time meeting. Nice to meet you." The young man approached Huang Yuan and reached out his fair palm, actively smiling. Under the light brown slightly curled long hair, there is a touch of endearing smile on the typical European and American face. "Excuse me, who are you?" Huang Yuan, out of courtesy, reached out and shook hands with the other person. "My name is Lex Luthor, Vice President of Lex Group," Luthor introduced himself. Huang Yuan's hand suddenly trembled as he held on to the other person, as the name was so thunderous. Superman's archenemy, DC Earth has the smartest brain, even the man who can play with applause when facing the creator god. Lu Guangtou. However, looking at this guy with lush roots and listening to the vice president, Huang Yuan knew that this guy had not fully become a bald Lu. "What can I do for you?" Huang Yuan frowned and asked. "Don't you invite me to your house for a drink?" Luthor asked with a smile on her face. "Sorry, I don't have much good wine at home, and I don't like drinking either," Huang Yuan refused directly. Just as Luther snapped his finger, the bodyguard standing next to him immediately stepped forward. Huang Yuan was puzzled and saw the other person holding a rectangular wooden box in their arms. "This is the wine I brought specifically to taste with you." Luther pointed to the wooden box and said, "We're not very old, so I think this wine is very suitable for us." Huang Yuan's heart suddenly rose with displeasure because of today's situation. He didn't like this kind of familiar guy. Just when he was about to refuse. "Is this the bottle of 1811 vintage white wine from Chateau d'Yquem, Chateau d'Yquem, in Bordeaux, France?" Eli, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke up and asked. Luther looked at Eli in surprise and said, "This beautiful girl, I didn't expect you to know her. Your erudition amazed me." Huang Yuan frowned and whispered in Eli's ear, "Is this thing good?" Eli looked up and pondered for a second before saying, "If I remember correctly, its value should be around $120,000. "Come on, Mr. Luther, please come inside." Huang Yuan approached and hooked Luther's shoulder, warmly welcoming her. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. For major military industrial syndicates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. For major military industrial syndicates. As soon as he entered the door, Huang Yuan stepped forward and snatched it from Luther's bodyguard. No, he took the wooden box. He arrived at the wine rack next to the living room with the wooden box, and first placed it upright in a blank space. Then he took down the bottle of champagne worth $10 that his father had bought in another compartment. When leaving, I grabbed 2 glasses and walked straight to the living room sofa to sit down. After opening the champagne, Huang Yuan poured a full glass of wine and placed it in front of Luther, then smiled and said, "Come on, Mr. Luther, don't be polite." This operation stunned everyone present except for Carrie. After being stunned for 0.5 seconds, Luther regained her smile. Then he raised his glass and smiled at Huang Yuan. "I believe what Huang is asking now is why I came to see you." Huang Yuan nodded. Luther took a light sip and said, "I told you before where I came from. Our Lexus Group has always been committed to the research and development and manufacturing of high-precision equipment, and has a great reputation in the military field. Last quarter, we invested as much as $1.3 billion in military, aviation, materials, and other fields, ranking first in the United States." Huang Yuan frowned and said, "So, what does this have to do with me?" Luther put down his glass and stood up, extending 2 fingers, saying, "Because, I want to know if you're the one who vetoed all of this." Huang Yuan narrowed his eyes upon hearing this and said, "Did you know what happened that day? The Divine Shield Bureau has the ability to hide from ordinary people, but North America is a world of capital. Huang Yuan doesn't find it strange to know about chaebol like Lex Group." Luther confidently smiled and said, "The Divine Shield Bureau has a deep strategic cooperation with us in technology and research and development, and it is not difficult to admire your heroic figure. Your combat prowess sometimes makes me wonder if you are truly human." Huang Yuan shrugged and said, "I think with your and Lex Group's abilities, we've already found out, haven't we?" Luther nodded and said, "That's right, no matter how you investigate, you are a purebred human." Huang Yuan had long guessed this. Although he had crossed over from another world, his physical body was a purebred human in this world. So he is not afraid of guys like Luther who have extreme humanistic ideas. "So, what exactly are you looking for me for?" Huang Yuan frowned. "I would like to invite you to become the General Security Advisor of Lex Group." Luther took a document from the nearby bodyguard's hand and placed it in front of Huang Yuan. "I don't like signing contracts, just let me know." Huang Yuan didn't even look at this thing. "The scene of being trapped in the morning is still vivid in my mind, how could I still step on the pit?" Luther was slightly surprised at the words, then smiled and took the documents back to the bodyguard. Then he crossed his hands and continued, "That's okay. The condition I offer you is an annual salary of $30 million after tax, which can be paid in advance for 2 years. I have an exclusive office at the group headquarters and enjoy all group benefits at the same administrative level as myself. At the same time, you are eligible to participate with me in high-level and board-level meetings, and have the right to make recommendations. And the group will give you a private residence with an area of no less than 500 square meters, which is closest to the company. In terms of car use, the company will give you a Mercedes-Benz top-tier business sedan, a Cadillac bulletproof extended SUV, and a Fengji sports car for commuting. You can use both the group's commercial aircraft and my private aircraft at will. Huang Yuan, who was holding a wine glass with elegance, almost choked on the drink he drank when he heard these words. $30 million, if he accepts this off he would be a high-end person with an annual income of over 100 million. Luther seemed to have thought of something again and raised his index finger, saying, "Oh, by the way, and considering Mr. Huang, you have to take care of your family, you can freely choose your office location, and the group will not restrict you." Huang Yuan put down his wine glass and a solemn expression appeared on his face. "Mr. Luther, there is an ancient saying in China that goes pie will not suddenly fall from the sky for no reason. So, did you offend anyone outside and need to use force like mine?" Luther chuckled and said, "It's truly Mr. Huang. He has a sharp eye like a torch, and he can hit the nail on the head. You're right, I did encounter some trouble and I need you to protect me for a while." Huang Yuan asked in confusion, "Do you know the source of the threat?" Luther nodded first, then shook his head and said, "As a large conglomerate, Lex must have many opponents, so I can't give you 100% certainty." Then he took out an envelope from his arms and handed it to Huang Yuan. The latter took over and opened it, only to find a threatening letter, which stated that Luther's life must be taken within 3 days. Luther leaned back against the chair and said calmly, "There are peers of similar size as us Lex, such as Stark Group, Hammer Industries, and Cod Industries. There are too many opponents, I can't confirm who the specific threat is." Huang Yuan put down the envelope and asked, "So, what do I need to do?" Luther raised her hand and raised 3 fingers, saying, "I hope from tomorrow morning onwards, you can protect me personally for 3 days. Of course, I will arrange someone to take care of these 2 lovely little girls' food and accommodation for the next 3 days. You don't have to worry at all." Then he pulled out a check from the inner pocket of his suit and pushed it forward on the table. Huang Yuan lowered his head to look at the tails of 6 zeros, then nodded with satisfaction and took them into his arms. Collaborating with smart people like Luther is easy, they will help you consider all aspects. Since that's the case, that's no problem. Huang Yuan's face showed a sincere smile and said, "There is also a Chinese saying that goes, take someone's money and help them alleviate disasters." Upon hearing this, Luther chuckled and said, "I really like your Chinese proverbs. They are so philosophical and wise." So, the 2 quickly reached an intention to cooperate. After seeing off Luther, Huang Yuan whistled back to the sofa. "He's clearly probing you," Eli said, sitting on the sofa. "So what? They gave me a hard work fee," Huang Yuanyang said, waving the check in his hand. "He's not stupid, he wouldn't know who Luther is. It's true that he was threatened, but he wants to use this opportunity to determine your strength and join his 2 plans." Eli stood up and went to the kitchen, taking out a pack of soda from the cabinet. "It doesn't matter, receiving money to help others alleviate disasters." Huang Yuan shrugged and said nonchalantly, "Take me with you tomorrow." Eli tore open the packaging and took out a biscuit and put it in her small mouth. Just as Huang Yuan was about to say what kind of fun children should join in, he heard Eli say first, "You know I'm not an ordinary person, taking me by your side is only beneficial to you. Trust me." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Assassination. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Assassination. The next day. After sending Jilly to school earlier, Huang Yuan drove straight to Lex Group. "Why did I promise to take you out?" On the road, Huang Yuan, who was driving, felt a bit depressed. Eli, sitting in the passenger seat, crossed her hands with a hint of maturity that did not match her appearance. She turned to look at Huang Yuan and said, "Because you're worried about that person named Luther. You seem to have a deep understanding of him, even his future. Who is Superman?" Huang Yuan's face darkened upon hearing this, and he interrupted Eli's next words, saying, "If you still want to live well in this home, it's best not to use your ability to explore people's hearts. At least you're not allowed to use it on me and my family." Eli nodded without hesitation and said, "Okay, I get it." Next, Eli kept looking out the window all the way, seeming to be thinking about something and didn't speak again. Huang Yuan is also happy and quiet. Not long after, the two arrived at the headquarters building of Lex Group. As soon as I got off the car, I happened to meet Luther, who was preparing to leave. "Huang, you came just in time. I happen to be going to the group branch to handle things." Luther approached Huang Yuan and gave him a warm hug, then pulled him onto his own extended Rolls-Royce. "Mr. Huang, you are really a skilled and brave person. How dare you bring your child to work?" On the way, looking at Eli sitting quietly next to him, Luther took the initiative to speak. "This child is not used to being alone at home, so he came with him," Huang Yuan chuckled. Eli took the initiative to say, "If I disturb your conversation with my brother, I apologize to you here." Luther raised her eyebrows and said with a hint of surprise and gentleness in her eyes, "I'm joking. It's very pleasant to have a beautiful and knowledgeable girl like you as your companion on a boring journey. To get to the point, when I went out this morning, I received another threatening letter." Speaking, he handed a letter from the nearby cabinet to Huang Yuan. Upon opening and scanning the content, he found it to be a uniform threat, but at the end, a detail caught his attention. "It seems that you have provoked more than one force," Huang Yuan said as he crumpled the envelope into a ball. "Is it very troublesome?" Luther retorted. Bang! Zila! Before Huang Yuan could answer, the front tire of the car was suddenly hit by a large caliber bullet. The powerful force directly pierced through the thickened tires, causing the entire vehicle to lose its front center of gravity. The inertia brought by high-speed driving caused the car to start slipping on the road, leaving the entire interior in a mess. The driver turned the steering wheel frantically to quickly stabilize the slipping car, but before he could operate it, the rear wheels of the car were also shot and exploded. However, after all, it is a customized vehicle of the same level as the president's vehicle. Even if the front and rear tires burst, it still did not overturn under the strong chassis stability, and even began to stabilize under the control of an experienced driver. Boom! The next second, the chassis of the car suddenly exploded violently. The whole car was shaken and flew up more than 10 centimeters high, but the armored vehicle-level chassis that could withstand mine explosions was once again carried down. But before the driver could recover, a violent explosion suddenly occurred at the front engine of the car. In the deafening roar, the entire Rolls-Royce was blasted into the sky, and the terrifying explosive power transformed the incredibly hard reinforced body of the car. Then the car fell heavily to the ground, and the entire car was engulfed by the raging flames. Hundreds of meters away, on a halfway up the mountain, Freud put away his heavy sniper rifle, collected the casings, and wiped out any traces of the scene before preparing to leave. "Are you so confident that you must have taken down your goal?" At that moment, while Freud's face remained unchanged, a pistol suddenly slipped out of his wrist. Bang bang! There was even no time to aim, and each bullet hit Huang Yuan's heart and forehead with precision as if it had grown an eye. But what made Freud's pupils dilate was that the bullet hit Huang Yuan without even breaking his clothes. It was like hitting an invisible wall, the entire bullet deformed and lost its power before falling to the ground. But at that moment, Freud had already fired 2 more shots, each aimed at Huang Yuan's eyes. However, the bullet still seemed to have hit an invisible wall and had no effect. Good marksmanship. Huang Yuan couldn't help but clap his hands. Watching movies is one thing, watching real people is one thing. Being able to maintain absolute shooting skills in such a tense situation is truly the man. At this moment, Freud had not given up yet. He did not respond to Huang Yuan's words and quickly pulled out 2 large-caliber pistols from his legs. Bang bang. Under a quick pull of the trigger, bullets shot out from the muzzle. This time, Huang Yuan raised his hands and directly grabbed both bullets in his palms. Bang bang. The gunshots kept going, and each bullet, under Freud's precise control, hit the same point. But even so, Huang Yuan's hand remained unscathed. Give up, if you don't want Zoe to get into trouble. Huang Yuan's words fell and the gunfire came to a sudden halt. What did you do to my daughter? The hoarse voice emanating from Freud's holster carried a suppressed murderous intent to the extreme. What your daughter will do depends on what you want. At this moment, Luther, who was certain to be safe, walked out from the side and asked, "Who sent you to kill me?" "Sorry, the rules cannot be said," Freud said calmly. "So it doesn't matter if your daughter dies?" Luther said calmly. "I have prepared in advance, and once I die, there will be a reward of all my savings as a bonus to kill you, which will be permanently effective." Freud stared at Luther. "I don't believe this man will be by your side 24/7. I will let you know what it means to live a life full of fear." Upon hearing this, Huang Yuan couldn't help but clap his hands and say, "I am truly a death shooter. From the moment I received the mission, I planned everything in mind." After pondering for a second, Luther said to Freud, "Otherwise, I would have let your daughter go, but you must give up the mission and not provoke us again. Of course, I will give you $1 million check as compensation for giving up the task. How about that?" Freud's eyes twitched slightly upon hearing the words, and after glancing at Huang Yuan, he directly agreed. With this pervert around, the task is definitely impossible to complete. So taking the money and leaving is currently his best choice. As Floyd, who had taken the check, rode his motorcycle and left, Luther turned to look at Huang Yuan and said, "If it weren't for Mr. Huang this time, I would have been in trouble." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Interpretation of Killing in Self. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Interpretation of Killing in Self. Excuse me, I don't think so. Huang Yuan shook his head upon hearing this and said, "Your performance has been so calm from just now on. Besides me, you must have enough backers. At least, I haven't seen any signs of you being anxious since the incident just now." Luther smiled nonchalantly and said, "After all, with someone as strong as you by my side, how could I be afraid and flustered?" Huang Yuan just smiled at this and didn't say anything more. If this is Lex Luthor in his middle age, he believes that Mount Taishan will collapse without changing his face. As for now, quickly, Lex Group's new car arrived at the scene and the 3 people were reconnected to the car. Assassination did not change Luther's itinerary, as if it were as simple as making a cup of coffee while working. He's lying. When Luther got off the car and entered the branch office building, Eli, who was walking behind, said, "Just like someone holding an umbrella on a cloudy day." Huang Yuan sat down on the sofa outside the conference room with Eli, and then took the coffee and milk brought by the female secretary beside him. "You don't need to reveal anything. I know that Freud took on the assassination mission, which was posted by Luther himself." Hand the warm milk to Eli, and Huang Yuan took a soft sip of his coffee. Eli held the cup and said curiously, "Aren't you angry?" Huang Yuan smiled and said, "Why are you angry? Since you have received someone's money, you have to do something, no matter what the reason is. After all, I can understand testing my strength." Eli nodded as if she understood something. Then she asked again, "What if he continues to do this?" Huang Yuan sneered and said, "Then he's not Lex Luthor." Ah. At this moment, a terrifying scream suddenly came from outside, followed by the sound of automatic weapons firing. "It seems that he may not be," Eli smiled. "This time it's true." Huang Yuan looked up and drank the coffee from his cup in one gulp. Then he stood up and began to tidy up his clothes, then asked, "Eli, have you studied law?" "I know, the castle law now applies to the U.S. Self-Defense Act." Eli raised her small hand. "Stay here, Uncle Lex will take care of you." Huang Yuan looked at Luther walking out of the conference room and said calmly, "Right." Luther nodded and said, "Leave her safety to me, don't worry." Huang Yuan smiled slightly and turned to walk downstairs. At this time, the entrance of the Lex branch company has been occupied and surrounded by dozens of fully armed militants. Head, the worm has taken control of the building's security system and immediately cut off the alarm device. The electronic signals of the entire building have also been blocked, and even satellite phones cannot be used. The fastest reaction time for HGPD is 10 to 15 minutes, and it takes at least 25 to 30 minutes for the main force to arrive. The hyena has also taken control of all escape routes with its people, and it's impossible for anyone to escape. As originally planned, we have a task completion time of nearly 40 to 40.5 minutes. Listening to the report from his subordinates, the leader wearing a colorful skull mask let out a soft nod. Then he said in a deep husky voice, "Sweep the stairs on both sides of the building as fast as possible, and try to solve the battle in 25 minutes. "Yes." The subordinates were ordered to disperse one after another. Huang Yuan walked down the stairs, and the Lex branch only used the 8 floors below the building. So, he quickly encountered armed members who were sweeping and occupying the stairs. Bang bang. At the moment of seeing Huang Yuan, the armed militants walking ahead lifted their guns and quickly connected 2 shots. But the person who fired the gun in the next moment was dumbfounded, because the bullet hit Huang Yuan without even breaking his skin and fell directly to the ground. The latter, however, had already arrived in front of him like a ghost. Before he could continue shooting, Huang Yuan suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the barrel, then gently pinched it. The metal gun body immediately deformed like paper and couldn't shoot. Another armed man raised his gun to avoid his companions and shoot at Huang Yuan, but his companion in front suddenly arched and collided with him. Bang! The tremendous force took the 2 of them straight out and fiercely collided with the wall and the stairwell, causing cracks to appear on the walls. At the moment of colliding with the wall, the 2 armed militants had already died due to internal organ explosions caused by the anti-seismic force. Huang Yuan continued down without paying any attention to the 2 corpses next to him. He is a Saiyan. Although I don't know why there is no tail. But he is not the kind of Saiyan monkey with only muscles in his mind, but a Saiyan who lives in human society and has parents, relatives, and friends. Killing, yes. Huang Yuan has never been soft-hearted, and he is not a bad person either. But if it's just pointless killing, what's the difference between it and animals that drink blood? If someone makes you unhappy or dislikes you due to their strong power, they will be killed. In the end, there will only be betrayal and separation, being a lonely family without friends and everyone afraid of you. The reason why humans can become primates of all things is because they can use their brains. Bang! Armed militants who went upstairs saw Huang Yuan and without hesitation raised their shotgun, which was a shot. Countless steel balls spewed out from the muzzle under the push of gunpowder, but in his eyes, they were as slow as snails. Huang Yuan shook his hand briefly, and the terrifying force immediately triggered an airflow, sweeping the steel balls back in an instant. The armed militants suddenly flew backwards and were pierced by steel balls through their bulletproof vests, penetrating their bodies. At this moment, the armed militants downstairs learned of Huang Yuan's existence and immediately adjusted their strategy. When he walked down 2 floors, he saw 6 armed militants gathered there waiting for him. First, 2 shock bombs hit him, and a flash and strong sound burst out in an instant, but it didn't even make Huang Yuan blink his eyes. Then 6 large-caliber automatic weapons fired simultaneously. The sound of gunfire was deafening in the stairwell, and the tongue of fire spewed out from the muzzle. Copper casings quickly popped out of the gun and fell to the ground, emitting a series of metallic crisp sounds. But Huang Yuan seemed to stroll in the garden with ease and freehand brushwork, constantly dropping compressed and deformed bullets beside him, continuing down. Fuck, what kind of monster is this? The team leader stopped shooting immediately upon seeing the situation, took out 2 high-explosive grenades from his waist, pulled out the safety, stopped for 3 seconds, and then threw them directly at him. The others cooperated harmoniously and stopped shooting at the same time in the next second, rushing towards the bunkers on both sides of the staircase gate. Boom! A violent explosion spread throughout the entire staircase, causing severe tremors on the ground below. Later, when the armed militants wanted to see what Huang Yuan would be blown up into, a figure emerged from the black mist and flames. You guys like fireworks, right? Huang Yuan raised his left hand and aimed his palm at the location of the 6 armed militants, smiling slightly. Buzzing an energy bomb flew out of his palm, giving the armed militants no chance to react. Immediately, Huang Yuan turned around and stopped looking behind him. Boom! Compared to the more violent explosion just now, but unlike the explosion of black gunpowder, it did not damage the structure of the building. Under the action of high-intensity energy, 6 armed militants were instantly engulfed and melted without leaving any trace. End of this chapter.